Hello everyone, my name is Vibhu and today's topic is
Do agile practices really work for the new hybrid workforce? Many of you know me. I also work at Accenture, and I've been an agile practitioner for many years. 1998 is when I started doing agile. So if this thing goes away, I don't know what else to do. I am a certified Scrum trainer. I've been teaching, which is one of my passion. And one of the things I found, this is around COVID. So this agilist concept was people are trying to learn something new, and I found like everybody wants to try to upskill. And while I was teaching more outside as well, but I started kind of formally calling this company. And so far in the last year alone, we have trained around, I don't know, 600 plus people. And many people who come to our workshops are actually people who already are looking for a job or trying to change their career. And that's sort of one of our goals, is to help people either find a second career or practicing leaders. We can help people who are actually looking to do something new. This is my family. We're an agile family. My son is in Boston. He's studying for his film school, certified Scrum Master. My wife is the product owner of our home. She's a pharmacist, and that's my daughter Mahi. She's going to be in engineering school this fall, and that's my Oreo and Zuri, my dog and the cat. Right. So that's kind of a little bit about me, and we live in Seattle here for the last many years. So what are we talking about, right? So I think if you generally think about agile, right, and I'm going to leave it kind of open-ended pretty soon. So when you think of agile pain points, and many things that we are pointing out, that hinder how we work today, right? A lot of agile was made for kind of a different time zone. And now if you've used phones, like right now, if we say phone, all of us are going to show a smartphone like this. But if we said phone like 20 years ago, we will show a dial phone. Like many years ago, I remember having this dial phone coming along, right? Agile started in 2001, and Agile was started because we wanted to, at that time, waterfall was the only predominant way. But this is not 2001. Now we are in 2022, right? So the question becomes like, are we using an old phone, old style of phone, to do the new kinds of work, right? And what pain points do you have? Um, so how do we do that? So what can we do? So for a minute, I'm going to let you kind of type in the chat. When you think of Agile today and how you practice, can you type in the chat? What are you seeing in work? What problems do you see with Agile, with the new way of working now that we have, that we work from home most of the time, right? Some stuff. So Bowen says, the lack of in-person time, sometimes Scrum meetings diverge into water coolers and vice versa. Loss of connectivity with my teams, less participation, right? And so on and so forth. Mark says victims to revolutionary change rather than investment in evolutionary change. Yeah, so we just want to do this big thing, versus adapt to small changes. A number of meetings have increased, right? And it feels a lot more meetings. Like everybody's calendar is just booked and overbooked, right? So how do we fix that, right? And again, the second question I want to ask is, well, so yeah, Agile is bigger than Scrum, right? So Agile is kind of a mindset, principles, and values, which maybe we can talk about. But then we need to fundamentally question, right? Like Scrum started in 1993 in a company called Patient Keeper, right? We don't write software like that anymore. We don't do work like that anymore, right? Internet was not even there in 1993, right? So we are talking about a different problem. So the fundamental question is, are we applying, stuff that was outdated, like many years ago, to new ways of working? Because now we are building different kinds of systems. We are driving more electric cars. I mean, we have all kinds of new technologies in play, right? So these are kind of two of my themes back in the day, right? The one on the left is back in India. This is where the product owner has visited them, and they're kind of having a deep daily stand-up conversation with him. And you can see the proximity, and they're connected, they know each other. You can see in the picture that they're talking to each other, right? On the right side is my first Agile team that I trained back in Boston. This is in 2006, I think, and this team has been doing a Fistify, and they are still together. Many of them, they call the pilot years in Boston, and but if you notice them, they have a projector and they work together, right? And we don't work like that. We don't have whiteboards like that anymore. So it's not just about COVID, and I think I don't want to just blame it on COVID. I don't want to just say because of that, but are we using something fundamentally that's kind of built for some other time? And the answer is probably yes. Some new entrepreneur is going to come up with something new pretty soon. it's probably, and then things are going to change, right? So what is that you think in Scrum that may be causing issues, right? To you right now? Cameras off, is something that Tom is talking. Unlike this picture that you see, if we leave cameras off, we really can't read. So face-to-face, prefer face-to-face conversation. Well, there goes your face-to-face right off the bat, because there is something about the proximity of people standing next to them, watching their body language. We don't get to watch the body language in a video call, right? And I met a recent team member of mine. She had never met me ever in the last 2 years. We've seen each other a lot, but we've only seen the top half of each other, right? So when I went to meet her, like in a meeting, she was right. I was right in front of her. She was right in front of me, and we actually had no idea who each other are, right? It took us a few minutes, and she's like, Vibhu, and I'm like, called her name, and she's like, I had no idea it's you, right? Because we've never seen like that, right? So these are all kind of challenges that we see. So now let's talk about, forget about COVID, but what are some fundamental problems with Scrum today, right? So the first problem, I call it the backlog problem, right? Like the never-ending backlog, no end in sight backlog. People are just stressed out. I meet teams every day, right? So where people are talking about, this sucks, I'm always working on something. The PO is always giving me work. This is loading my work, right? So what do I do, right? So if we need to be creative, we need to kind of stop thinking about just loading our teams with the next piece of work, because that really is not what we should be doing, right? So that's one problem, like the let's keep the team busy problem, right? The other problem we have is this concept of this velocity epidemic, right? There are these, I don't know, so-called agile coaches, leaders, managers who kind of say, hey, team A does 40 points, but team B is doing 100 points. I wonder why team A is not doing so well, right? And they start getting into like debates and discussion. So that kind of hinders our thought, right? If someone comes to you and says, well, your velocity is too less, we're like, I don't know, fair enough, right? So that becomes a significant pressure in teams. So they just start doing stuff. If someone asks for more velocity, we're just going to do it. So therefore, you see a huge drop in quality of software. So there is now a true data that we are actually probably producing. If you don't do Scrum well, you may actually end up hurting your product than helping, because your quality can significantly drop, and it does drop when people focus on the wrong kind of metrics. The third one is like a culture that we have, kind of this epidemic of KPI. And if you look at Agile KPI, you're going to see a bunch of metrics coming along. People have workshops and classes. Well, we are humans, we're not machines, right? KPIs are needed a lot for, yes, I understand we need it for like work. But if you focus solely on output than outcome, then we become kind of, so Scrum is heavily, while we say it's focused on value, a lot of the metrics we do in Scrum is still very output focused. A velocity is an output indicator, for example, right? Number of stories completed is an output indicator. Customer satisfaction is an outcome indicator, but we don't really track that for teams, right? And the second thing we have is a problem of, our companies were made from the Gs of the world, right? From the bigger companies of the world. And so they're very command and control structured. So they're very top heavy companies. If you think of, we actually have in companies more managers than workers. We have people to manage, people to manage, people to manage, and 60 to 70% of companies are still like that. So we're trying to fix something without changing the organizational structure. And to what Ashwini was saying earlier, right? If we don't value the culture core, it just doesn't work, right? So that's kind of the gist of what I was trying to say, right? So what can we do about it, right? And I'm not saying this is, if I were to do it, I would make all process optional, right, for a team. Let the team decide what to do, and don't dictate to them what needs to be done, right? Teach them agile principles and practices, and let them pick, and don't force them to say, depending on the kind of work. So if you think about our kind of work, Scrum is made for a synchronous work, like time box. We are all together in the same game. Our sprints are there in the same time. We're meeting and doing all these meetings together. That is not how we work in hybrid workflows today. We have become from sync to async. We use Slack a lot. We use Teams a lot. Things like sprint planning, where we're expected to stay together, doesn't work. Like, for example, in between, this call, I'm sure all of us had one more task to do as something happened around you that you probably were attending to as this call was happening, right? Imagine like what, you can't be there physically in front of a team all the time with video on, because that's not how it's. So we have a sync process called Scrum, which is meant for synchronous working. People are together in a team room working. Now we need something new, which is kind of allowing people to work asynchronously. Like, so daily Scrum is a synchronous thing. we can't do daily Scrum. We need something different, which allows us to be more async. So you just chat with someone, and then somebody in India says, yeah, I got it done, right? So measure the team, not the individual alone, right? And I don't know the answer to this, but I'm just saying we really need to think about when we pick these things, how do we deal with it, right? So that's kind of my gist.